You know, there was a lot of controversy surrounding the opening ceremony at the Paris Summer Olympics. Part of the ceremony involved what appeared to be a mockery of Da Vinci's Last Supper painting involving drag queens. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us from Los Angeles. Lisa, many people felt like this portion of the opening ceremony was a real slap in the face to Christians all around the globe.
Yeah, of course, there's been a huge uproar about this and very in poor taste. I mean, of all the things that could be depicted in terms of art, dance, music, to kick off sports games that bring the whole world together, why would you try to do something to stick it to more than half the world? In something, again, a show that children are watching, people are watching together as families, again, bringing together all the religions of the world, all the cultures of the world. I mean, how many countries were presented and featured, and thank God for that, right? We all celebrate. I mean, in a time of war and division, we celebrate the Olympics because it's a time where everyone can come together. Ironically, there is a rule where you cannot have any sort of political or activism on your uniforms. There was actually some uproar about that too, because they felt like the Palestinians had rockets, and a lot of them wearing keffiyehs, another political symbol. Whereas, for example, the Israelis could not wear their yellow ribbons that just signifies the return of, bring home the hostages. So a lot of different, where is it allowed and where is it not allowed? It's like a pick and choose where there's no consistency, but it only serves leftist views and policies. Now, in response to this, the Olympic Committee said, well, we only wanted to basically promote tolerance. Imagine that, Hal. Tolerance by putting on this spectacle. And of course, if anyone was offended, well, we're sorry about that. So basically, it was, half measure, apology that says you shouldn't be offended, because if you were really tolerant, you wouldn't be offended. And if you are intolerant and you were offended, well, then in that case, we're sorry. Really, really in poor taste. A lot of people said, France's response was, well, this is France. Well, that makes a lot of sense because yes, this is France. And, it's really a shame again that they had this opportunity to bring the world together, all eyes on France, all eyes on the Olympics, families watching, and they really blew it. It was in poor taste. It wasn't even funny. It wasn't even artistically pleasing. I can understand why a lot of people are upset.
And what did it have to do with sport? We're celebrating amateur sports here, so it really didn't make any sense. Now, Lisa, there were reports that following the controversial opening ceremony, that some of Paris allegedly went dark due to a power outage. Now, several users took to X posting videos showing pictures of the city left in the darkness, except for one church in the background. Nothing was confirmed by city officials, however.
Right. So there's investigations going on into a few different plots here. So let's break this all down. Before the Olympics started in France, there were already threats that there will be attacks on the Olympics. Terror threats. Obviously security threats geared towards, of course, the Israeli team, but others as well. This is not just about Israel. Obviously, it's about the West. It's about the Olympics being, again, symbolic of the West. It's in France. Again, we know that they have a jihadi problem. So there were threats. Actually, Israel's government came in and said, we're going to tell you that we think that there are very credible threats. So you might want to go deeper into your security apparatuses and beef it up a bit. There were direct threats that we are certain about that are being investigated against the Israeli team. But what you're talking about, perhaps could have been a hack and could have been either a third-party nation or a group, and that is being investigated right now. They do believe that foul play is at work here. Why would France go dark? Why would things, shut down and be inoperable? We're waiting to find out what that is. But I think many of us can take a wild guess as to what's going on here.
Yeah, let's circle back to those threats here. So 3 members of Israel's Olympic squad were sent threatening emails?
Yes, and I mean, hopefully they just remain at emails. If you remember, there was, the Olympics of in Munich, where the There were terror threats against the Israeli team that weren't taken seriously, and members of the team were killed. I mean, think about an athlete traveling to a different part of the world to show off their athletic ability and to compete with other members of the globe, and for their lives to be taken because of jihadism that is not taken seriously. Now, imagine 50 years later, the same teams' lives are in jeopardy because of these threats. So France's authorities have told us that they will take these threats seriously and they're investigating them further. But really, it's horrible. If you think about this, there were also games where there were signs where Israelis or genocide and things like that. You can see that all over the web, where they're being taunted, where they're being threatened, where their lives are in jeopardy. How can they really focus on their sport and their game and their performance when you can't even sleep at night thinking, well, there might be an attack on my life or my teammate's life just by being here and competing here?
Lisa, a rocket attack that killed 12 children on a soccer field in the Golan Heights has left Israel shaken. The Israeli military says it was carried out by Tehran-backed Hezbollah, but in a statement, of course, on Sunday, Iran denied any wrongdoing whatsoever.
Yeah, not surprising, right? The mullahs in the Islamic Republic wash their hands of all responsibility, but many believe that the Hezbollah war, which is the next front in the war that Israel has to fight, Hezbollah, of course, being the best endowed proxy of Iran's regime that is about 40, 42 years old, started in the beginning of this regime taking over Iran, and really giving it whole bunch of missiles, short, medium, long range drones. They are equipped. They're well trained. They have 30 to 50,000 fighters. They have 150 to 200,000 missiles pointed towards Israel and ready to start this war. So the provocations that we're seeing, each one is predicted to be the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, the catalyst that begins this war. And of course, myself and many others had predicted that there will be a war this summer between Israel and Hezbollah, that Iran's regime had calculated that they will allow them to fight Hamas, basically a war of attrition, let the Israelis tire out, in their fight against Hamas, and then we'll bombard them with our number one proxy, Hezbollah from the north. This Druze community was targeted in this attack, where 12 children were killed in a soccer field, and many people around the world who are advocating are saying, why is it that Arab children on this side of the border inside Israel are not advocated for, and the Arab children on the other side are advocated for? So it's something that the mainstream media, they have blurred all the headlines, making it look like it's one way and not the other. But this was a Hezbollah attack that killed 12 Druze Arab children inside of Israel.
Yeah, very sad indeed. Lisa, Turkey's President Erdogan is threatening to invade Israel over the war in Gaza. He says, quote, "We must be very strong so that Israel cannot do these things to Palestine." So let me ask you, if Turkey does attack, could Israel receive more support from the United States?
Oh, it's such a tangled web, right? So Turkey all of a sudden, and not Turkey, I want to say Erdogan, because he is a complete Islamist. He has played both sides, meaning the East and the West, to get support. We call him a frenemy here in the United States because when it serves them, they become a NATO nation, they become Western, they become, they want to play with the big boys on the global stage. But then they're also, he wants to take the country back to Islamist ways and really promote a lot more Sharia law inside Turkey, etc. Now he's saying, wait, I'm relevant too. I want street credit too. I want to be a part of this too. Wait for me. So now threatening Israel to get involved in this war, yet another front for Israel. Now let's talk about all the different fronts that Israel is fighting. Obviously, Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, obviously Gaza and Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, of course, Syria and Iraq, where the Islamic Republic insurgencies are, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Palestinian Islamic Jihad in that region as well. And now you can add Turkey to the list because that is their way of staying relevant and joining the club.
A hostage who was released by Hamas in a November deal, Lisa, she talked about the tortures that she endured. Maya Regev said Gazan doctors poured chlorine, acid, and vinegar into a gunshot wound, ignoring her pleas to stop.
Right. So, this goes against a lot of what we're reading in the mainstream media, that the Israeli hostages were given cake and tea and had a great time while they were being held hostage. They are hostages. They're being held hostage by terrorists who among them in their society, their journalists are terrorists. That's what we've learned. There are, UNRWA, which is their NGO, the main humanitarian organization funded by the UN, funded by Canadian and American taxpayer money. They are the terrorists that are embedded in that organization. They're doctors here torturing these Israeli hostages. We don't need, a PhD in regional studies to understand that these are terrorists who are looking to torture and to intimidate and to kill these individuals solely because they captured them from Israel. And they're not just Israelis, by the way, Hal. I think you and I have spoken about this many times. There are still up to five Americans, maybe eight, that they believe are alive and being held by Hamas. It's almost been a year. Why should Hamas, a terrorist organization, be holding American hostages and the American government do nothing about it? And of course, many other nationals as well who were caught in this crossfire and taken as hostages by Hamas.
House Republicans are promoting a bill that would make foreign students who support and participate with terrorist groups ineligible to remain in the United States. Lisa, this was in response to pro-Hamas protesters who brought chaos to Washington recently.
Yes, and these were the protests in particular that were against Bibi Netanyahu's speech that released maggots and all kinds of disgusting critters into the hotel where he was speaking, and actually burned an American flag outside of the main train station in Washington, D.C. I think it's pretty fair to say if you're burning an American flag and you're here as a guest in the United States studying or doing whatever that it is that you're doing, you shouldn't really be here. You should decide on your own that you don't want to be here. But if you still are here, you shouldn't be allowed to be here. So I think it has a lot of bipartisan support, and I think it's going to continue to grow in sentiment. When the Americans understand that this is a threat to them, not just free speech as it is often chalked up to be, then there will be more people on board.
Speaking of support, it appears as though Kamala Harris is receiving a lot of it right now as the Democratic nominee. How close is she to actually securing the nomination?
Quite close. Look, the Democrats were stuck in this awkward position to either support her because of this honeymoon phase where she announced and she gained all this momentum and was able to raise a ton of money. A lot of women coming out to support her. A lot of minorities love the fact that she would be the first African American, South Asian female president. So she would be a lot of superlatives. I spoke to a lot of people last night. I was at a political event where they feel as though this is just a honeymoon phase and the momentum will actually slow down. Now, it's interesting because we're coming up on the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, the week of the 19th of August. So less than a month away. There will probably be more of a momentum growing into that. But there are also many Democrats who think she doesn't have what it takes. She doesn't have the experience. She doesn't have, or her record in her experience is so radical that it doesn't really suit the rest of the nation. She's very California in that regard. If you've watched her videos as vice president, she is a nervous speaker, doesn't really come across as somebody who's well prepared or seasoned in policy. So she will have an uphill battle. But right now, she is riding this wave, riding this momentum, this honeymoon phase of her being celebrated across the board, getting endorsements from many, many prominent Democrats.
So what are the polls saying right now? I know a lot of the support for Trump was shored up following the assassination attempt. Republicans are very strong in support of Trump, and now the Democrats seem to be rallying behind, Kamala Harris right now. But what are the polls saying when it comes to who's actually going to win?
Yeah, actually, so if you're asking me today, the polls are very close and maybe even showing Kamala in the lead. Now, this will change, and a lot of people, again, last night I spoke to a lot of people who told me polls don't even look at polls until after Labor Day. We have to wait until the DNC, the Democratic National Convention happens, and then the momentum dies down, and we'll see where things fall. And again, a lot of what you and I hear, Hal, is from the media. The media represents, New York and Los Angeles and Chicago. Does it really represent Pennsylvania and Michigan and Ohio and places where the average American worker lives? People who have to pay for groceries, people who have to pay for gas, people who are fed up with a lot of the status quo. I don't know if they will have the appetite to continue these Democrat policies for another 4 years with Kamala, but we will wait and see. There is so much to happen between now and election day. There will be an October surprise. There always is. So, I mean, there have been so many surprises that I don't think that an October surprise can really take us somewhere. Really, maybe I'm wrong, and we'll definitely be surprised. But there will be many twists and turns.
Could we maybe see a potential upset, speaking of surprises, and maybe Kamala Harris doesn't secure the nomination?
Perhaps. I mean, look, there's always an opportunity to do that with the DNC. The issue with that is right now they don't have enough time. And that is what a lot of Democrats, I think that was their calculus, right? To say, well, we would perhaps have fresh blood, somebody who hasn't been vice president, whose name has been associated with the current administration, maybe somebody who's more seasoned, maybe somebody who's a bit more moderate, because I think the pendulum has swung a bit too far to the left. But again, they don't have enough time. They have to fundraise, they have to get their name out there. They wouldn't be able to take over the Biden funds for that candidate. So I think in the interest of just getting to November, the Democrats may feel that they have to keep her as the candidate.
Interesting times lie ahead, Lisa. Political reporter and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thanks again for joining us from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you.